himself. He lay on the bed, gasping out, humming along to the obnoxious calliope music that was blasting from Creole Queen, a riverboat docked blocks away. He'd enjoyed a lot of sweet wine with his banana bread pudding, and for the first time in a long time, he thought he was beginning to feel like himself again. Housekeeping had drawn his curtains to keep the room cool, but he yanked them wide so he could watch the orange clouds curling beyond the balcony he hadn't worked up the courage to use yet. Too public. The rifle leaned against the writing desk as innocuous as a guitar. The man felt very good. He ordered a plantation punch from room service, and this was delivered with an assortment of nuts and butter cookies. He sent information that when he was ready for supper, which would not be for some time, that he'd like to try a stuffed merlicon or a roast duck, whatever came most recommended. And then he passed a quiet afternoon. But as the sun started to drop lower in the sky, the French doors of the most expensive suite in the Cardinal opened out onto the balcony, a wide platform that stretched the length of the building, contained by a beautiful iron rail of coils, bird sculptures, and finials made to look like pine cones. There was a filigreed iron table and 2 pretty chairs under an awning, a chaise for a madman to sun himself, a portable bar that could be stocked with liquor, ice, and a barman at a moment's notice. There was also a panel of buttons for summoning service. The sky was still mostly blue, but there was that encroaching pink around the edges of things, that warning that the day was sliding away, and probably quite quickly. The clouds were enormous, low, and from the balcony's vantage point almost in reach. The moon already out, impatient to get on with the night. Those who loitered on the banquettes below saw him right away because, to be honest, they were looking for something special. And there he was, coming to the railing, shirtless and barefoot in black pajama pants with yellow Tweety birds all over them. His chest was pale, perspiring, and his ever-growing tummy sort of poked out, but he still had the strong, triangular frame of a young man. His hair was bed-wrecked, and he was squinting. The eldest was not immediately recognizable in his condition, partly because he appeared lonesome and foggy and serious. He gripped the rail and looked down. A schoolgirl had stopped as if she sensed his presence. She tilted her face up, shaded her brow. She was probably only 15 or so. He waved at her, and that's when the hubbub started. His smile was unmistakable, and pretty soon people started calling his name from the street. At first he was friendly, responding to each shout-out as sweetly as he could manage, pretending to relax with his hands folded over the rail. But as the crowd gathered, getting louder and rowdier, the eldest lost his guts. "You all go home now," he said. And they laughed at him. They weren't going anywhere, even if he meant it. And just like that, New Orleans was spoiled for him. The spell shattered. He'd have to leave, and very soon. He went back into the room and sat on the bed. The sensible thing was to call the handler and zoom out of there pronto. The crowd started a little come out chant that went strong for a while and then faded before it transformed into a song. They sang Heartbreak Hotel. Well, damn, he kind of liked that. Or maybe not. He felt good one second, shitty the next, and his head was hurting like hell. The migraines were back. He'd not had one since he'd returned, and now they were back. He didn't think he could live through the migraines again. The crowd adjusted to his suffering. They sang Love Me Tender next. Moments later, he reappeared with cheers. The crowd had tripled in size, and cars were trapped on either end of the block. He trailed the rifle behind him like a toy, and no one saw it until he raised it up and took aim at the clouds. One huge, deep cloud looked like a savage blood orange. The eldest aimed, hit, fired, and hit. There were some in the crowd who screamed, but they shut up quick to listen to an impossible creak coming from the sky. It started out metallic, but finished like whale song. The eldest sobered and took another shot. The next creak was supremely extended. The agony was unmistakable. Someone said, "Is it alive?" Barges cruise the port of New Orleans, and they come from all over, carrying oil, soybeans, you name it. They move slowly, deliberately, as if they are there to remind us that there are other places in the world, other frames of mind. But the damn things crash all the time. Crash into each other, into the riverwalk, into bridges. One took out a 200-foot chunk of bridge at rush hour. 40 cars went right into the river. The sound of a barge grazing what it shouldn't, that's a horrible thing. Terrifying, because you know it can't stop, not until it's done. That's what this sounded like. Like terror, like the breaking heart of Leviathan. Again, someone yelled. And the eldest gave the people what they wanted. He always did, you know. The cloud came down to rest on Louisa Street, like a fat lady's foot in the skinny shoe. It moaned softly as it descended, and before it hit the tar and chip, everyone watching was in tears. For the first time ever, the Elvis was on a stage and no one cared. He lowered the rifle and prayed. The orange cloud touched the ground and its weeping ceased. At first it began to contract like cotton candy, but then it stopped moving altogether. As the neighborhood and its visitors held their breath, the cloud commenced the most natural of processes. It began to dissipate, to burn off. It was only fog after all.